Hi, welcome. So we're going to get started before we're all full in this room, just for the live stream. I'm Komoroske. I'm lead product manager on Chrome's web platform team.
And hi, my name is Elisabeth Morant, and I am the product manager for Chrome Security.
So today we're going to tell you about 4 forces, some of them old, some of them new, that together combine to create the next generation mobile web. Now, a lot of the times at I/O, we tell you about all kinds of amazing features that are going to come 6 months, maybe a year from now. But today we're going to cover only things that are already shipped in Chrome that you can use. So we don't have that much time, so we'll cover things at a pretty high level. But there's lots of great dev bites and box talks here at I/O that go into more depth on all of these. So let's get started. So the reason that Elisabeth and I are here is because, well, we love Chrome.
And we love Chrome because, like many of you, we love the web.
I mean, it's kind of amazing that you can connect with any topic or community you want without asking anyone permission, which allows all kinds of kind of wacky stuff to happen. So my personal favorite is this site called Real Ultimate Power. Do I have any, know what that is? OK, yeah, there's a few of you out there. So this is this amazing satire site. This guy has a page about ninjas. He's super crazy into ninjas, and he hates pirates.
Oh, of course.
That's important. But he just put this site up there. People thought it was hilarious. They shared it. People found it and loved it. My crew team, we actually found it and we loved it so much that we actually posed for a picture as ninjas and uploaded it to the site.
OK, you have to show everyone this photo.
OK, kind of set myself up for that. But here's the picture that I am extremely proud of from a number of years ago.
Which one is you?
So I'm actually not entirely sure, but based on the farmer's tan, I'm pretty sure that that one's me. So, well, anyway, I embarrassed myself. You embarrassed yourself.
OK, all right, I guess it's only fair. So when I was 12, I was really into video games, especially adventure games. So I took to the internet to make my first website. And clearly, this was my first introduction to programming, and I owned up to it with the giant space in the bottom that I didn't know how to get rid of.
Very subtle.
But the point is that this let me connect with this huge community of people out there who had the same passions as I did.
Yeah, all 400 of them, if I see that counter right.
Yeah, half of them were me refreshing the page. Anyway, so these are just a few weird examples. But the web is a really powerful technology that's enabled a number of very thriving businesses to form. E-commerce alone in 2014 was worth more than $1.5 trillion.
Jeez.
It's huge.
That's trillion with a T.
Yes.
Wow. So the point of this is we've shared some examples from our past, but we're not alone. In fact, I bet that almost everyone in this room and on the live stream has a connection to the web. It's this amazing, vibrant, weird, global community that we're all a part of. It's awesome.
OK, so the title of the talk is The Next Generation Mobile Web. So what are we doing on mobile?
That's a great question. So mobile was a fundamental shift. It changed the assumptions from desktop. So performance became incredibly important, making sure that you could hit 60 frames per second on devices that were running battery power. And there's other capabilities that just became totally critical. So push notifications, for example, are just crucial to how you interact with your mobile device, and the web couldn't do it. To be honest, native apps really just were well suited to this environment.
All right, so I guess we should all just make native apps then?
Oh, no, I'm not saying that. Now, native apps are great, but the web is also amazing. In fact, a number of its strengths that made it so strong on desktop are as strong as ever. So just the other day, I looked and I checked to see how many people use dev tools in the past week.
Okay.
So as a point of comparison, Android is an amazingly successful platform. It has, I've seen public stats somewhere around, I don't know, 4 million or so for an estimate for developers. So how many people do you think loaded Chrome DevTools in the past week?
A week, maybe a million.
Turns out the answer is 25 million people have used Chrome DevTools in the last week. And that's really cool because that's not a stagnant number, that's actually growing over time. So the point is, not all of these people are building huge, complicated websites. Some of them are tinkering. But this community that we're all a part of, it's huge, it's strong, and it's growing. So this talk today is for those people in this community, those 25 million people who love the web. Woo!
So to start, we're going to talk about reach, the superpower of the web.
We're also going to talk about performance and how we've made big strides there.
And finally, we're going to talk about engagement, how we're helping you build immersive experience that keep users coming back.
So the three of these separately, whatever. But together, combined with that global community, that's something special.
So the web is extremely successful, largely because of its reach. And we don't give it enough credit.
I mean, we give it a fair bit of credit. We understand that browsers are on every device and every operating system, but
I mean, that's true. Even now, cars have browsers. But, and we have over 1 billion Chrome users. And that doesn't even count other browsers and other people browsing the web. But what I'm talking about is another aspect of reach. That is not the reach of browsers, but the reach of content. So the way I think about it is the web is a series of trees with nodes, right?
Okay.
Where every website is a tree, and the root is like Pinterest.com, and then you dig deep, and then you're on a board, and that's a leaf. And then if you jump from URL to URL, then you're jumping from leaf node to leaf node, and so on and so forth, and that's why it's so easy to jump between link to link.
I have literally no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, fair. Let me show you an example.
Great.
So if I could jump to the demo laptop. Great. So let's start on a video of the latest Imagine Dragons single, Shots. So I know that every single one of you in this audience loves Imagine Dragons, probably not as much as I do. It's basically the best band that's ever existed. It's better than the Beatles, really.
Wow,
I'm gonna
okay,
go on
sure.
about it. Anyway, so the point is, the web, reach, trees, right. So YouTube is a tree, and this particular piece of video content is a node. And so I could just share a URL with you, and then you can watch this piece of content. And likewise, I can learn more about Imagine Dragons, navigate through YouTube, maybe jump to Wikipedia. And at this point, I've jumped from one node to the node of another tree, the Wikipedia tree. And I so easily reached a piece of content deep in Wikipedia just by clicking a link.
Okay.
Right? And so from here, I can, read some articles, I don't know, jump around, learn about Alt-J, jump back. I'm not going to bring you through the entirety of the web, but
That would take a long time, I think.
yeah. And I can jump to their band website. In this case, I wouldn't necessarily want an app for every band that I love, but I do want to be able to go to their website and learn about things like when they're going on tour and find out, hey, Alex.
What?
Can you take over for a second? They're on tour, and I know the tickets are going to sell out, and I just really need to buy a ticket right now.
Are you kidding me?
Please, you know the slides.
Okay.
Actually, can we jump to Wolf Vision so everyone can share in this experience of buying tickets with me?
Wow, you really love the Imagine
I
Dragons.
love Imagine Dragons.
Okay, well, while she's doing that, it's kind of cool what she was doing. In the course of a few seconds, she visited, like 7 different services, all without installing anything. That's kind of cool. It's something that just happens that we totally take for granted on the web.
Anyway, sorry, I'm back, guys. So it turns out the tickets aren't on sale yet, so I just went to their website and opted again to get a notification when they come back on sale.
Okay.
Anyway, so where were we? Can we go back to the slides?
Something about reach, I think?
Oh, right, friction. Okay, friction sucks. Friction being the amount of overhead from a user wanting to get somewhere to actually being able to get to that piece of content. And on the web, it's as easy as just tapping a link.
Okay, so this, I think I see what's going on here, but this seems all really abstract. Is this something that actually matters in practice?
Yeah, so here's something. On average, the average person uses around 12 to 20 apps per month on their phone.
Sure.
Yeah.
Depending on which stat you
Yeah, depending on what source you look at. So keeping that in mind, guess how many sites the average Chrome for Android user visits in every month?
Okay, so are we including like third-party content and iframes and stuff?
No, I'm talking about like direct link navigation, going through the Omnibox, and this is all unique domains.
Okay, so 12 to 20 for apps, maybe double that, like 40 or so?
Over 100 websites a month.
Wow, that's actually really impressive. I didn't realize it was going to be that big.
See, that right there is reach in action. It's so easy for people to just tap a link and visit tons of new sites with no friction. And in fact, it turns out that 85% of US retailers' mobile traffic is on the web, and that accounts for 90% of their revenue.
Wow.
And now this is just one example, and this is why I consider reach the superpower of the web. So the way I think of it is, now bear with me, you want people to form a meaningful relationship with your stuff. But first, people have to find it.
Okay.
So it's kind of like the web is one big speed dating venue, right? Where you can jump from person to person and get to know them a little bit. And just like you can jump from website to website and get to know it a little bit before committing and creating developing a relationship with that content. And you're never afraid to necessarily click a link, because what's the worst that can happen, right? After 5 minutes, the bell rings and you move on to the next place. And the point is that you can then, when you decide you want to commit, you can build that relationship over time. And so we take reach for granted, but it's really as important as ever.
Okay, so that's reach, but of course, just as important on mobile is performance. But what does good performance mean? How do you know when you're done or when you're good enough?
Well, that's easy. It's just the amount of time it takes a page to load.
So page load time is something that we've all known about as a community. We call it PLT or whatever. We have good understanding, we've got good tools, there's whole conferences on it. That's not to say we're perfect, by the way. There's a lot of us who don't necessarily practice what we preach here. But on mobile, other metrics matter too, like scrolling performance. To have that illusion that the content is sticking to your finger as you scroll, you gotta hit 60 frames per second consistently. But which of these metrics should we look at, and which one should we be optimizing? So the answer to that is this concept that we call RAIL.
Great, another acronym.
Of course, what do you expect? So it's basically a conceptual framework for knowing when you have good enough performance. So the key insight is, when is performance good enough? Well, when the user can't perceive it, that's when it's good enough.
I'm pretty sure Don Draper didn't actually say that.
Okay, good catch. He didn't say that as far as I know, but he might have said it, if only he had cared about this kind of stuff. But the point is, there's actually a lot of research on this. So if you're trying to get that illusion of smooth motion, of course you want to hit 60 frames per second, which means 16.67 milliseconds to put each frame on screen. Now, if you want to have the user feel that the thing happened instantaneously, research tells us you've got about 100 milliseconds. And if you do something within 1 second, well, then someone's train of thought can stay on it. And if you take more than 10 seconds, well, then they're off playing solitaire or something.
Definitely took more than 10 seconds.
Thank you for that great example. So anyway, these are the golden standard for you to hit. And RAIL is basically just hitting these goals in the context of your web performance. So the first one is R for reaction time. So basically you have, this is exactly when the user puts their finger down on the glass and starts interacting. You have 100 milliseconds to do something, to show you got it.
Yeah, sure, otherwise the app feels broken or slow.
Exactly. So that's 100 milliseconds to change the button color, or to show a loading indicator, or show, I got it, I'm not frozen. The next one is animation time. You've got, of course, 60 frames per second is the gold standard, which means 16.67 milliseconds. Now, that's not a lot of time. So if you do anything, you might miss that. So you have to be really, really careful. So the last one is, or the next one rather, is idle.
Why is idle part of RAIL?
Okay, so you have to do some work that's going to take some time, like image decodes or whatever.
Sure.
And you can't do it when the user is interacting. So a good time is when the user doesn't have their finger on the screen.
Right.
However, what if the user's finger comes back in while you're doing that work?
I see. You don't want to be in the middle of idle time, because otherwise you're not going to be able to react. The user might think the app is broken.
Right, so you want to make sure you chunk up your work that you do even in idle. So if at any point the user starts interacting with you, you're good to go and can hit that 100 milliseconds, the R of RAIL. And the last one, of course, is our friend load time. Of course, it still matters, if not more, on mobile. And the gold standard here to keep the train of thought solid is 1 second.
I wish everything loaded that fast.
Yeah, it's pretty low, right? Remember, this is for perfect performance. And things like Quick and Serviceworker actually make this feasible for the first time. And of course, if you can't get your entire site loaded up on screen, well, the next best thing is putting reasonable pixels on screen to show I've loaded, I'm working, I'm not just stuck.
Sure, some loading image.
Right.
So this is all great in theory, but what does it actually mean in practice?
So RAIL is a great conceptual framework for us across the community. So for browser vendors in particular, it means giving you as developers more headroom, more space for your own code to do this work so that you don't hit across those boundaries. So the Chrome Web Platform team is way over, I think, 200 engineers last time I checked. A lot of people, the vast majority, work on some aspect of performance. We've been doing tons of work, vast re-architectures to optimize for mobile performance. Now, we don't have time to dive into any of these in any depth, but let me just pick one. So a couple months ago, we launched this feature called the Scheduler. And the basic idea is that when you start interacting with the page, that's when, of course, you want to prioritize scrolling and frames as, over everything else. And then it turns out that this can have a really big impact, especially during page load when there's lots of work being done. So here we've got a video, and if we can roll the video, we have on the left with the scheduler, on the right without. We refresh the page, so we're doing tons of work. And you can see that one on the left scrolls way more smoothly than the one on the right. So this is a great example of Rail motivating work for us as browser vendors to make your site just get faster automatically. Thanks. So if we can move on to the next slide. So it's not just on us, it's also on developers to work with us. And so part of it is better tooling so that you can understand your own performance really well. So of course, DevTools is incredibly powerful. A new feature that you can try out in Canary behind a flag today is a feature called Filmstrip. So what it does, it shows you on, you can see it up there on that row of images, it shows what pixels were on screen at different parts as you loaded the page. And so you can see here that this random C. Wilso guy, his blog is hitting about 8 seconds for the pixels to be on screen, which is way past the 1 second that you want with Rail. And so now, of course, you dig in with DevTools and figure out what's going on.
So DevTools is really powerful, but you basically need a PhD to understand all of it.
Yeah, it's so overwhelmingly powerful sometimes. So we're also working on tools that will make it so that you can open up DevTools, and it will say, hey, you're consistently missing the A in Rail. It turns out that this third-party script, this analytics script, is doing way too much work on scroll. Consider removing it. And so making it much easier for you to dive in without having to need a PhD. And of course, the last one is just holding ourselves as web developers to a higher standard. So the I/O web app is an amazing example of a highly responsive 60 frames per second web app. Now, it wasn't easy to build, but it is getting easier and easier every day. And all of us, every single time we include a third-party script or resource, or we fetch out to another third-party domain, we should ask ourselves, is this worth it? Is this going to make it me lose or go past those goals in Rail? So there's only so much time to cover performance. The point is that we've made a lot of big strides, and I think that this is a great framework for us as a community.
So the web has a superpower of reach, and now it's possible to have 60 frames per second, even for the most complex mobile apps. But what the web is missing is the ability for users to build meaningful relationships with the stuff that they find, to really engage.
Yeah, so I mean, speed dating is great. You meet a whole bunch of people in a very short amount of time, but what if you meet that person and you got a little bit of a spark? You want to, get to know them a little bit.
Exactly, and native apps are great at this.
Okay, I got an idea. Why don't we just list all the things native apps can do and just copy that for the web?
Well, I wish it were that easy. The problem is that with every new API also comes a whole new set of risks. And we want to maintain the security guarantees of the web, the ability for users to jump to a link and not worry that something's going to happen to them. So let's take, for example, background sync. So background sync being the ability for an app to fetch and send content when the app is closed, right?
Sure. Sounds good.
So if you're visiting over 100 sites a month, then you don't necessarily want them all to arbitrarily start syncing the background.
Okay.
Just like, let's say you browse some embarrassing sites at home, like some celebrity gossip site. I'm not going to call what celebrity Alex is obsessed with.
Guilty.
And then you go to work, and in the meantime, your phone lost battery. You turn it on when you get to work, and all of a sudden, you start fetching embarrassing content while you're on your corporate network. Well, we're trying to save people like Alex from an embarrassing visit to the sysadmin's office.
Ooh, okay, I get that. I see.
Right. And so basically, if we bring back the speed dating metaphor, let's say that you meet someone, right, for the first time,
yeah.
and you really feel that spark, and you think this could be the one. Do you give them the keys to your apartment, introduce them to your parents, bend down on one knee and vow to spend the rest of your life together?
Yes.
No, of course not. Geez, that could be a serial killer,
okay.
Right? And so the idea is that you want to build a relationship slowly, right? And the problem is that we can't necessarily emulate or copy the powerful model of native apps because native apps have a store, they have ops teams, and the web is open. And so what we want to do is enable websites to progressively ask permission for powerful and engaging features. And the idea is that users should be able to indicate when they want to trust a site enough to give them certain permissions. Basically, if everyone got access to your bank account as soon as you met them, you probably wouldn't want to leave your house.
Yeah, so it's more important for the reach of the web than to have all these capabilities for every random site you go to.
Exactly.
Got it.
And so the idea is that with all these new APIs come a set of risks. And Chrome has this responsibility to make sure that people can still browse the web securely. Now, with this in mind, we've already brought a few exciting APIs to the web, and we're going to talk about two of them right now. The first is Add to Homescreen. So typing, especially on mobile, is really hard. But mobile is where people go to kill time.
Yeah, so I mean, you go to the coffee shop to meet your friend, they aren't there yet. You want to read something interesting, but not too interesting, because at any point they might show up. You have to put your phone away.
Exactly. So you open up your phone, you tap an icon, and you fall into some experience that you're okay jumping back out of again. And so we already have the ability for people to add sites to their home screen. It's buried kind of deep into settings, but we find it has surprisingly high usage.
So why don't we just make that way more obvious and make it really hard to miss?
Well, if people are visiting like 100 websites every month, then probably every new, help forum you go to, you don't want to necessarily add it to your home screen. And so what we've done is we've incorporated some really smart heuristics and said developers can use this API and request to be added to the home screen as long as people have engaged with the app enough that we've detected that they actually want that app on their home screen.
Okay.
So take this as an example. I really enjoy reading Vice News. And I read an article earlier this week, and this morning I opened it up again. And I found that I got this prompt from Vice to add the website to my home screen.
Okay, but that's awesome. But what happens if you tap that and you don't have connectivity?
Well, what you don't want to see is the dreaded offline dinosaur,
Yeah.
right? And so native apps actually handle this case very well. Even if an app depends on connectivity to work, they usually have some sort of like splash screen saying, sorry, you can't use this, but come back later, something custom to the app. And for that reason, we've only enabled add to home screen for those sites that have a meaningful offline experience.
Which is a great point, that offline is an incredibly important thing for building engaging experiences on mobile web. So, obviously on your mobile devices, you're way less likely, or way more likely rather, to have a flaky connectivity or no connectivity, or like being at a tech conference where the Wi-Fi doesn't work exactly as it should. The problem is, historically, we've only had app cache to handle this.
So what's the problem with app cache?
App cache wasn't exactly very popular. So it was easy to get started, which is great, but it's declarative, which is also great. But it's kind of complex. If you do anything, rather, slightly complex, you can't do the things you want to do, and it quickly falls down and is unworkable in practice. So what you need, of course, is more control. And Serviceworker brings you that control. So let me tell you how it works. The basic idea is when you visit a site, you can install a service worker, and that service worker is basically a script off to the side. And now, when the browser is going to fetch a resource from your domain, it first, instead of going to the network, it asks the service worker, hey, what do you want to do? And the service worker can say, just do what you would have done, go to the network, please. Or it can say, ooh, please hand back this thing from the cache. Or it can even say, create a resource on the fly and pass that back.
So basically, it's a client-side proxy written in JavaScript.
Exactly. So this allows you to build arbitrarily complex offline experiences. And when I say arbitrarily, what I mean is you can build something extremely complex or extremely simple. So the I/O web app is a great example of a complex offline web app. It does very careful caching so that even if you load it when you're fully offline, you get something meaningful. But then when you're connected, it will show you UI about, hey, there's fresh content. Tap here to see it. Of course, a more likely scenario or easier scenario is just to aggressively cache everything you use so that your thing works offline. There's a great Gulp plugin called SW Precache that makes this incredibly easy to integrate into your workflows. And of course, the simplest possible thing you can do is get rid of that darn offline dinosaur for your thing and basically say, hey, service worker, if the user tries to fetch my site and we're fully offline, instead of showing the offline dinosaur, just show my own little splash screen that says, please connect to the internet and try again. That takes only a few lines of JavaScript. So service worker is cool for offline, but it has another trick up its sleeve. So a service worker, a single one, can talk to multiple tabs, or it can talk to no tabs. So it's the first place that we as developers have a place to write and run script, even when no tabs for my site are open.
Well, that's bad. People don't want any random site executing scripts in the background.
Exactly. And that's why service workers are event-driven. So what happens is a networking event happens. The browser goes to the service worker, says, hey, I got this network event. Service worker handles it. And then it's done. It's just sitting there not doing anything because it can't. And so at that point, we can freeze dry that thing, put it off in storage.
Right, until the browser sends a new event to wake it up.
Exactly. So when a new event comes in, we bring it back into memory really quickly, which takes, I think, around 50 milliseconds or so in practice in the wild. And then it can go on its way. So the cool thing is that this isn't just related to browser or to network events. You can also imagine other types of events that would potentially wake it up to do work.
I see. So the browser can choose what type of event it wants to send based on what it thinks the user actually wants.
Exactly. So this is really powerful. It enables an entirely new class of functionality that before wasn't even possible to bring to the web.
So one of the new features, only made possible because of Serviceworker, is push notifications. Now, until now, only native apps were able to send push notifications. But there are cases where you would want push without everything else that comes with being an app.
So are these important, or?
Yeah, this is extremely important. Basically, notifications are game-changing for engagement. More and more people are interacting with their phone, opening up new apps and experiences, largely because they got a notification first. And it's much less common that people will open up their phone and kind of dumbly look at their app grid and decide what they want to use. Here's an example. So The Guardian has a native app, and they found that in the hours after a breaking news event, up to 40% of their article views came from push notifications alone.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it's huge. And so to demonstrate how important this is, I'm going to jump into a demo. So 9 months ago, Oscars season, I was at home, but I had to do a lot of work, so I wasn't able to watch the Academy Awards live. This is a huge bummer for me, so what I ended up doing was I would jump between my computer, and then I kept refreshing the Guardian live blog to see, who had won. And what I would do is I would refresh, and I'd see, what Reese Witherspoon was wearing, and then I'd, click on that, and then look at some of her past filmography, and then just get distracted and jump back to my computer.
Basically getting nothing done.
Yeah, basically I was not getting anything done.
You're working.
Or at least I wasn't getting a lot of work done. But what if the Guardian had push notifications, right? What if I didn't have to jump in and engage, and instead the Guardian told me when there was information that I actually wanted to know? So suppose I open up the live blog, and I scroll down, and I see the ability to follow the story. So the Guardian explains why I'd want to opt into notifications. I want to engage with this particular piece of content, so I hit Enable Browser Notifications. And at this point, Chrome sends me the prompt, and yes, I want notifications, so I say Allow. Great. So now, confident that I'm going to get notifications about the content I'm interested in, I can just close Chrome and get back to work. So I'm working.
Clearly.
And I see a notification. This says, I don't know if you can see it on, I haven't tested this out. Right. So I see a notification on my watch that says that sound editing won some award. Now, this is one of those lame awards, so I just swiped away. I don't care.
Wait, so you got that on your watch?
Yeah, I got it on my watch because Chrome sends notifications just like any other Android app would. And in that same way, I get notifications on my phone just like I do from my messaging apps. All right, so wasn't interested in that content, so I go back to work, drinking coffee, eating donuts, writing very important briefs. And I see another notification. And this one, of course, Birdman won Best Picture,
yeah.
Right? I mean, clearly we all know that the movie that should have won the award was the Grand Budapest Hotel, which I'm sure everyone else in the room agrees with me about. So in order to express my opinion, maybe I'll dive into the live blog, open up the website, maybe leave a few very tastefully written comments about why this movie should have won. Anyway, but I won't bore you with that now. So the point is, push notifications let you know information when you want it. Like, Alex.
What?
I'm so sorry. Can you know how to wrap this up. I just Imagine Dragons tickets just went on sale.
Are you kidding me? We're in an I.O. talk.
I know, but I told you they're going to sell out, and I really love this band, and it'll take me 2 seconds.
Okay, great. I guess why don't we go back to the slides? So I think the point that Elisabeth was going to make is that push notifications are great. In some cases, the notification is the content. You get all you need just by seeing it. In some cases, you want to dive in. And in other cases, it's for information that is so important to you that you want it to interrupt you at any time or place, including when you're presenting in front of hundreds of people at I.O.
I got the tickets.
Great. So happy for you. Hope it was worth it.
Anyway, the point is that push notifications are this new primary interaction paradigm. It's how people engage with their apps. And bringing push notifications to the web allows you to get information about what you care about before you've decided to necessarily commit to everything else that comes with an app. So, for example, I visit Ticketmaster once every couple of months but I really wanted notifications about this particular piece of content.
Okay, so the obvious question that we all have is, when can we use this? 6 months from now, a year from now?
Well, this is shipped to all Chrome users today. So anyone who visits a site with this enabled will be able to get push notifications or the add to home screen prompt, and developers can start adding this to their site at any time. And so the Guardian...
Woo! I think it's pretty cool,
Pretty
too.
cool, right? So the Guardian and Ticketmaster, both of these engineering teams built the prototypes that you saw today. And they're planning on bringing push notifications to their sites live in the coming months. And they're not the only ones. We have a number of early adopters who are rolling out push notifications within the coming weeks.
So the cool thing about this, too, is this isn't just some Chrome-only feature. We designed this very collaboratively with Mozilla, working in standards bodies. And in fact, this is a screenshot from Firefox that I took a couple days ago. Nightly build with a flag flipped that shows them asking for permission for push notifications. So that will be coming there at some point, too, which is pretty exciting. So Serviceworkers allows us to bring all kinds of capabilities to the web that before really didn't make sense or couldn't make sense. And because we're designing them with other browser vendors and standards bodies, it's something that you can come to rely on. It's kind of like the dawn of a new era for the mobile web.
OK, we promised we were only going to talk about today, not the future.
OK, well, the cool thing about this is you can start today, because these features are great at progressive enhancement. So if you go to one of these sites and in a browser that doesn't support push notifications, well, you see the same site that you would have seen before. But if you go to that site in a browser that does support push notifications, maybe they add another button that says, hey, I want to be notified when this thing changes. And then if I, as a user, opt in, I can have a really high-value thing that's really important to me, even before it's shipped in every browser out there. So I think that's pretty exciting.
So we talked about a lot of topics at a high level today, but there are a number of dev bites and box talks that you can visit that will go into a lot of these topics more in depth.
So today we talked about 3 things.
The superpower of the web, Reach,
How performance has made huge strides on mobile web,
and how we're making powerful new ways for you to build relationships with your users. Many available now and a lot more coming soon.
So the 3 of these alone aren't that special. It's the confluence of these 3 things that's really important.
Well, you're forgetting the most important one.
That's a good point, because these things by themselves, they just make it possible to do cool things. But what happens when you combine that with this global community of tinkerers and builders and makers, well, that's when something really awe-inspiring happens.
We can't wait to see what you build.
Thanks. So I think if there are any live questions, we can take them here.
First of all, fantastic talk.
Thank you.
The question is about the service workers which respond to events. Does it involve the events like AJAX requests, or it's only when you don't have a network which initializes during the
So basically what happens is you get a fetch event. So in your service worker, you say, Chrome, please notify me when any content from my domain is fetched. And then you will catch that event. You'll pass in what the request URL was, and you can respond to it that way. And that happens even when you're fully connected. Because, of course, you might be on flaky connectivity. And so you want to make sure you can design your experience with total control over what happens over networking to your site.
So you meant content of like HTML, or it includes AJAX requests?
Basically, almost every request
Anything.
that goes to your site. There's a few exceptions for specific things.
All right. So if you're using things like OAuth, which automatically authenticates, what's the design pattern to get data? Like, for example, if you used Google Plus authentication, right, which directly logs on to your page.
I think that's a great question to go into more depth in the office hours.
All right.
But like, yeah, you have total control over this. It's pretty powerful.
I got an easy one for you,
Okay.
I hope. The home screen, you mentioned that you find it interesting how many people use the home screen. I'm shocked at that. Where can I see the numbers for it? How many people actually add stuff to the home screen?
So I don't know if we have those numbers to share today, but it's one of those things that even despite being a buried feature, I think people find a lot of value. And that's one of the reasons that we decided to bring this feature to other websites in a more proactive way when we feel pretty confident that the user will be interested in that one.
And where could I find those numbers? Where do you find them from?
I'm sorry, those are numbers that we have in
Oh, secret numbers.
Yeah, secret
All right.
numbers.
What's the advantage of using a service worker over something like what we had at Angry Birds like 2 or 3 years ago. At Google I/O 2 or 3 years ago, they were using offline storage for Angry Birds. What's the advantage of using Service Worker?
So Service Worker allows you to have very fine-grained control over all aspects of what's happening on the network. So then you can use technologies like IndexedDB and caching, explicit cache API to do stuff. Whereas before you were limited to a very high-level declarative approach, that if it worked for you, it was great, but more likely it didn't work for you. It couldn't do exactly what you wanted to handle in this particular case, and so it was basically useless. So Service Worker, the way to think of it is, are you familiar with the Extensible Web Manifesto? So that's a notion that we should be defining the lower-level primitives that explain how the web platform works. So getting rid of the high-level magic and giving developers access to the low-level primitives that make that magic work. So Service Worker is like digging down deep below app cache to figure out what was there and how it worked and expose that to developers. Does that make sense? Probably not, but okay. Sorry.
Hey, I have a question on the user experience on the offline sites that you showed me. So let's say the user is traveling inside a tunnel, and then there is like a network break. So how do we notify the user, like at this moment you are online, and then you go offline, and this experience that you are having is the offline period, and then the network can come back again, and you can come online again. So
that's great. And so the cool thing about Service Worker is you have full control to do what's right for your app. So in particular, for example, I think the IO web app does this. If you're on flaky connectivity, it can say, I'm just going to default and show everything directly from the cache and then fetch resources, fresh resources. And so what might happen is the user's already looking at it. Fresh content has come back. You don't want to go pop and put the content there because they'll lose their train of thought. But with Service Worker and some of these demos, what people do is they'll have a small bit of UI that says, fresh content is available if you scroll up. And that way you don't lose your way in the app. But the point is, of course, that you have control to do what's right for your app, which is pretty exciting.
oh, that's cool. Thank you.
Hi, my question is in the demo that you showed, I get a notification from the Guardian app, and you go to the home screen of the Guardian app icon, and then you click, and then you open, and then you read. Is it possible that from the notification directly I can?
Yeah, that was just a bug in the demo.
Yep. So what happens is when you tap on the notification, your Service Worker receives an event that says the notification was clicked. At that point, you can say, OK, do nothing. Or you can say, focus a tab that existed before, or open a new tab.
Yeah, so I was supposed to click on the notification and jump directly to the content that it was notifying me about.
OK, sure, thank you.
Hi, very similar question, but rather than tapping on a notification, what if you get an email with a link? Is there any kind of association that would open up that installed web app?
So I don't know the particulars of exactly how it works, but if you have an installed web app with a manifest, there will be some cases that don't necessarily fit exactly perfectly into the intent system of Android, but we're working on those. I don't have all the information for you in depth on that, though, right?
Okay.
We should take the office hours.
Sure.
One question.
Okay. Are the notification preferences synced across a user's account, or is it per device?
It's per device.
And the reason for that is the context that you opt in is very device specific. So I might be interested in seeing celebrity gossip on my personal, because I have a thing for that apparently, on my personal machine, but I don't care about it enough to be notified when I'm on the go. And so exactly where the right user context depends on the device you're in, and so it's not synced.
And is that notification preference per domain or per specific website?
It's per domain, basically. And so the idea is you want to make sure as a site author that you use it very respectfully. So one thing we didn't show in this is the notifications that show up have a very obvious site settings button. And if a user taps on that, they're taken directly into Chrome's settings for that domain, where it's one or a couple more taps to revoke permissions for that domain. And so as a site author, you want to make sure that you explain to users what you're going to do and that you respect their attention, because it's very, very easy for them, of course, they are in control, to revoke permission very easily if you abuse it.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.